on the national political stage, there is this conversation around Kamala Harris and who she used to be versus who she's claiming to be now. And these old clips, as she's claiming to be like this moderate, these old clips surfacing of her supporting things like taxpayer-funded gender surgeries for inmates.
When I was Attorney General, I learned that the California Department of Corrections, which was a client of mine, I didn't get to choose my clients.
Right, a client of the Attorney General.
A client of the Attorney General, right. Of the Office of Attorney General, that they were standing in the way of surgery.
For prisoners.
For prisoners. And there was a specific case. And when I learned about the case, I worked behind the scenes to not only make sure that that transgender woman got the services she was deserving. So it wasn't only about that case. I made sure that they changed the policy in the state of California so that every transgender inmate in the prison system would have access to the medical care that they desired and need.
Okay, so that's just nutso, right? And I think most people understand that's just insane. You're going to spend the money we work hard for that the government takes from us through taxes on giving inmates, regardless of the crime they commit, transgender surgeries that they desire and that they need, according to Kamala Harris. So that was getting a lot of attention. And we know that we've covered it a ton, that Washington state allows biological men to say, I'm transgender, and to be housed behind lock and key with women. There's been quite a bit of coverage on this show and elsewhere in the national press, like National Review, but local media is just like, I'm not touching that. So there's this certainly, timely connection between what we're going to discuss and Jason's story and the Kamala Harris thing and her getting heat over what she said and supported, and also just this real twisted priorities that we have in the state of Washington while we deal with all these other crises. So Jason Rantz published a story. You can read it at mynorthwest.com. It says hundreds of thousands of dollars spent on gender reassignment surgeries on transgender inmates. It's a great article that he got some useful information via public disclosure, but one of the things that struck me about it is this is really hard information to get. As you guys know, the state of Washington, because of a law that was passed by Democrats, shields a lot of information on transgender inmates. They'll deny public records requests. They say basically this is protected health information, so we're not allowed to know who's transgender, who's a man in a woman's prison, what they've done, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I was kind of shocked that Jason, I texted him this morning, was able to get the actual data and cost analysis of how much the Department of Corrections in our state has spent on gender-related care. He has the actual graph that was given to him by DOC, and I said, how'd you get this? He said, through a public records request. He said it just took a lot of time for them to cough it up. But in this, so basically it's more than $500,000 that's been spent total through June 2024. Some of the costs were covered by Medicare, $592,577.67 to cover gender care for 44 inmates across 9 of the state's 11 prison facilities. So when I look at that, I just think on its face, that's ridiculous. We work incredibly hard for the money that the state takes from us in taxes, and to know that even a penny of it is going to help people get gender transition surgeries who are currently incarcerated is nutso. It's totally bananas. It shows just these whacked priorities and this extreme agenda that they continue to push. But as I was reading some of the details on it, one of the things I find even crazier about it is, for instance, they don't factor into or care how long an inmate might be incarcerated. So they're willing to pay with our money for some sort of transitional surgery for an inmate who might get out next year. Or, and I don't know what's worse. Is it weirder to pay for the transitional surgery of an inmate who might only have one more year in DOC, or for an inmate who's going to be there for the rest of their lives? Which one is crazier? Because in one instance, and this is the only reason that we know this name is because this person has been very public. They're currently incarcerated for murder, a double murder of their parents. But they have someone handling a blog for them on the outside. So they put all their business out there. The state won't put their business out there and their name out there, but they willingly put all their business out there. Brian Kim is his name. We've discussed on the show before. Biological man, I think now goes by some other name. Amber Rose Kim or something. Anyway, you killed 2 people. I'm using your God-given name, your legal name, Brian Kim stabbed his dad, strangled his mom to death when he was 19 years old, sentenced to life in prison without parole. And you may recall this story because he had gone on like a hunger strike because he got transferred, was in the women's prison, got caught having sex, which there is no consensual sex in prison, with a female inmate. So they actually, for the first time ever, sent a trans inmate back to a man's prison. That was Brian Kim, where he went on a hunger strike because he was so mad that he got kicked out of the women's prison. But according to Jason Rantz, ended up ending his hunger strike in part because if he continued it, he risked not getting transgender bottom surgery, which he so desperately wanted, courtesy of the taxpayers of the state of Washington. So, like, we're paying for, think about this. Think of how hard you work. Think of how much money the government takes from you in taxes. And think about the fact that some of your tax money is going to be used to give a double murderer who strangled his mom to death and stabbed his dad bottom surgery so they can live out the rest of their life in the penitentiary as a quote-unquote woman. That has to be a 99% issue. That has to be. If every Washingtonian could cast a secret ballot on do you agree with this or not, I guarantee that would be a 99% issue. Hell, I guarantee even most of the Democratic lawmakers in Olympia would say, I don't support that. But publicly, they have to pretend that they do. Publicly, they have to pretend that this is somehow just and normal, a good use of money. It's insane. It's an insane thing to spend people's hard-earned tax money on. And, you know, I'm so grateful that Jason was able to get this data because, again, I mean, they've sent cease and desist to the media who ask about anything related to transgender inmates. But to know that they're spending that much money on this type of gender care, which, you know, they're going to argue, well, it's, you know, we provide other care to inmates once they're in, you know, the care of the DOC. We have to give them things. And if they don't do this, they might commit suicide or whatever it is. Like, forgive me if I don't feel bad for a double murderer who wants to be a woman and be in the woman's prison and whether they can get bottom surgery. Does that make me a bad person? No, it doesn't.